Hi everyone, I'm Evely and I'm going to tell you an interesting story. Good luck. Alright, so here's my nightmare of a story, and I hope this serves as a wake-up call for anyone who thinks their life is all sunshine and roses. I'm 34, married for 12 years to Kyle, who I met when I was 18. I thought we had the kind of love everyone dreams of, high school sweethearts who ended up getting the house, the car, and the 3-year-old kid, Mason. Everything was perfect on the outside, but let's talk about the inside. The real stuff that was happening when no one was looking. I guess I should have seen the red flags, but I didn't want to believe that my perfect husband would be capable of anything like this. Over the past few months, things started feeling off. First, I brushed it off. Kyle started getting these weird work hours. He'd come home late, smelling like cheap perfume that wasn't mine, or he'd leave for work early, saying big client meetings. But I trusted him. I told myself I was just paranoid, maybe stressed with Mason, or the usual busy phase married people go through. But then, one night, something snapped. I didn't want to believe it, but I had no choice when it slapped me in the face. It was a Thursday night and Kyle was out. Again. He told me he was working late at the office, but something felt different. I was sitting on the couch, watching a show I didn't care about, when my phone buzzed. It was a text, but not from Kyle. It was from a number I didn't recognize. "I miss you, babe. Can't wait to see you tonight. Let me know when you're free." I froze. My heart stopped. For a split second, I thought maybe it was a wrong number, but my gut knew exactly what was going on. I tried to play it cool, tried to tell myself I was overreacting. But then I remembered the time he came home after one of his late nights. His shirt collar slightly askew, like he'd been in a hurry to change, and the sudden switch to being too tired for anything physical when we hadn't had problems like that before. It all clicked. I texted back, not knowing what I was expecting. "Who is this?" The response came almost immediately. "It's Megan, babe. You know who I am. Don't make this harder." I nearly threw my phone across the room. Megan. Couldn't believe it. Kyle had been cheating on me with some woman named Megan. It was real. It was happening right under my nose, and I had been blind to it. I wanted to scream, throw a fit, destroy his stuff, but instead, I did what I do best. I stayed calm. Too calm for my own good. But I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of seeing me lose it. No, I'd play my cards carefully. Kyle didn't come home until almost 1 a.m. I'd been sitting in our living room, staring at that damn phone, letting the anger simmer. When I heard the front door creak open, I stood up, my legs shaking from the adrenaline that had been building. He walked in, acting casual, like nothing was wrong. I could tell he'd had a drink or two, which made me sick, because I knew exactly why he was so relaxed. It was probably Megan, or whoever else he'd been playing house with while I was here, taking care of our son and making excuses for him. I didn't waste time with small talk. I went straight to it. "So, Megan, huh?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady for the chaos inside. Kyle froze, his face going pale. For a moment, he just stood there, and I could see the gears turning in his head. He was trying to think of a lie, something, anything that could get him out of this mess. But it was too late. I already knew. "What are you talking about?" he stammered, but I could see the guilt on his face. I don't know why men think they can hide that stuff. It's like they believe we're all dumb. Don't pretend like you don't know. I've seen the texts. I know about Megan. How long, Kyle? How long have you been screwing her behind my back? His eyes darted around the room, like he was looking for an escape route. "Look, it's not like that, okay? You're blowing this out of proportion." I couldn't help myself. My anger flared up, and I was done pretending to be calm. "Not like that? Are you serious right now? You've been cheating on me, lying to me, while I've been here, taking care of our son, giving you everything you wanted." His face twisted. "You don't get it, do you? It's not you. You're a good mom, you're a good wife. It's just, I don't know, I needed something else. She gives me something you don't." Something inside me snapped. "You needed something else?" I repeated, letting the words sink in. "You've been fucking her while we've been building a life together? And that's your excuse? He sighed, shaking his head like he was disappointed in me. I never meant to hurt you, Lacey, but you haven't been the same. You've changed. We've both changed. I didn't want to say it, but we've been distant. I needed someone who made me feel like I wasn't just stuck. I was stuck? That's what he thought? I was sitting here running everything while he went off playing house with a stranger. He didn't even care enough to try to fix things with me. He just wanted an easy escape, a quick fix. At that moment, I realized this wasn't just a betrayal. It was a complete dismissal of everything I had done for him. For us. It wasn't just the affair. It was the complete lack of respect. The audacity to act like I was the one at fault. Without thinking, I slapped him. Hard. And for the first time in a long time, I felt powerful. The slap echoed through the room, and for a moment, everything went silent. I stood there, my hands stinging, watching his face turn from shock to something darker. For a few seconds, he didn't say anything. He just rubbed his cheek, looking at me like I was some stranger he didn't recognize. But I could see it now. The arrogance, the selfishness, the complete disregard for what I'd given him and the life we'd built. And all of a sudden, I hated him. I really hated him. You're a fucking coward. I spat at him, the words burning on my tongue. You couldn't even be honest with me. You couldn't even come to me and tell me you were unhappy. Instead, you went off, got some other woman pregnant with your lies. Is she pregnant, Kyle? Because I wouldn't put it past you. That's when the tears started to fall. But they weren't the kind of tears you shed when you're sad. They were tears of pure rage, fueled by every sleepless night, every moment I spent trying to keep our marriage together while he was out there playing happy family with someone else. I wasn't sad. I was furious. Kyle tried to step forward, like he was going to comfort me or apologize, but I stepped back, shaking my head. Don't you dare. Don't you fucking dare try to comfort me. You've spent months lying, and now you want to play the I'm sorry card. He looked at me with wide, desperate eyes. I never wanted to hurt you. I swear. I laughed bitterly. You didn't want to hurt me? You already did. You think you can just wipe that away with a sorry? I was done. I was beyond done. This wasn't about saving anything anymore. This wasn't about fighting for a marriage that was already dead in the water. This was about my self-respect, about taking control back from a man who had treated me like a doormat. I wasn't crying because of him. I wasn't crying for us. I was crying for the woman I had been, naive, trusting, a damn fool. I had spent so many years prioritizing his needs, his dreams, his happiness that I had forgotten to care about myself. And now, I had nothing left but this rage and this overwhelming sense of betrayal. I want a divorce, I said, the words heavy, but so goddamn satisfying to finally speak out loud. Kyle's face twisted in disbelief. You're just going to throw everything away? I'm not throwing anything away. I shot back, standing taller than I ever had before. You already threw it all away the second you decided Megan was worth more than me. His face hardened, his eyes narrowing with frustration. Fine. If that's how you want it, then we'll do it your way. But don't think you'll walk away with everything. I won't let you. And in that moment, I realized just how deep the damage was. I wasn't just fighting for my heart, my marriage, or my son's future anymore. No, I was fighting for my own dignity and a chance at freedom. The battle had begun. The next few days were a blur. I didn't care to check in on Kyle's excuses or hear his sob stories about how complicated things were. I didn't need any more of his manipulative words. No, I was done. Completely done. I could see the whole picture now, and it wasn't just about the affair. It was about the way he treated me all these years, like I was some placeholder in his life while he figured out how to be a bigger man or a different version of himself. He wanted something else? Fine. Let him have it. But I was done being the woman who held everything together for someone who never truly saw me as an equal. I went into full survival mode. I started making plans, real plans. I called a lawyer that week. I didn't tell Kyle at first, and honestly, I didn't care if he found out through a letter or through the court papers. He had taken that decision from me a long time ago. One morning, after I had set up a meeting with a lawyer, I looked at Mason. He had no idea what was going on. But I did. I couldn't keep living this lie. I couldn't pretend like we were some happy family, with Kyle sneaking around and me too afraid to stand up for myself. I had to show Mason that strength mattered more than pretending everything was fine. When I finally told Kyle that I was filing for divorce, he went into full panic mode. He tried to cry, tried to beg me to reconsider, tried to make empty promises about working on things. But none of it mattered anymore. I didn't care if he cried. I didn't care about his excuses. I was going to protect Mason and myself no matter the cost. I couldn't keep pretending that his empty words could somehow fix a life that was already shattered beyond repair. The first day I went to court, I was nervous, but something in me told me to hold my head high. No matter what Kyle said, I had the truth on my side. And when Kyle's lawyer tried to paint me as a vindictive ex-wife, I didn't flinch. I'd prepared. I knew every detail, every piece of evidence, and I used it all. Kyle didn't know what hit him. He thought he could just waltz in and get his way like he always had. But that wasn't going to happen this time. The judge, a no-nonsense woman named Judge Collins, seemed to see through his act. She was direct, unbothered by his attempts at charm, and gave me everything I asked for. Full custody of Mason, the house, and a hefty chunk of his savings. Kyle was left with nothing, forced to pay child support for a child he barely knew anymore. But the sweetest moment? When I walked out of that courtroom, I could finally breathe. I didn't feel like the broken woman I had been in the past few weeks. I felt like the woman I was always meant to be, strong, fierce, and free. The days after the court ruling were nothing short of a whirlwind. Kyle did everything he could to make my life harder. He fought the custody agreement like a man desperate to keep any shred of control, and I watched him transform into the villain I never thought he could be. I couldn't even look at him without feeling disgusted. He was selfish. He only cared about himself, about getting back at me for daring to take everything he thought was his. But honestly, I didn't care. The court had made its decision. I had my son, I had the house, and I had my freedom. I had never felt so alive in my life. Kyle? He was left with nothing. His ego was shattered, his reputation tarnished. The once charismatic man who had been the center of our life was now just a shadow of himself. I could see him desperately trying to cling to his image, posting sad, attention-seeking selfies on social media, pretending to be the fun dad, when in reality, he couldn't even manage to spend more than a couple hours with Mason. At first, Kyle didn't even show up for the scheduled visitation with Mason. He had the nerve to send me a text saying he was too busy to make it. Too busy to see his son. I'm not gonna lie, a part of me wanted to take him to court again for being a deadbeat, but then I realized something. His actions weren't even worth my time. He wasn't worth my energy anymore. I had bigger things to focus on, like rebuilding my life. It was painful at first not having Mason's dad around. I had to pick up the pieces of my son's heart, explain in ways a 3-year-old could understand why his dad wasn't around. But what hurt more than anything wasn't Mason's confusion. It was knowing Kyle didn't care enough to fight for him. I was the one who had to pick up the pieces, and in some sick way I was grateful. Grateful that Mason would never know the kind of man his father really was. One night, after Mason had gone to bed, I sat on the couch in silence, replaying everything in my mind. I thought about the woman I had been. A woman who had let herself become someone's doormat. Someone who had believed in love at the expense of her own happiness. And then I thought about the woman I was becoming. I was no longer a victim. I wasn't the betrayed wife. I was a warrior. I was strong, confident, and fucking capable of anything. I didn't need a man to validate me. I had everything I needed, myself. Kyle, on the other hand, was unraveling. His life was a mess, his reputation destroyed, and he was living in a tiny apartment, far from the man he used to be. It was strange how the tables had turned. He had everything. Money, status, and a beautiful family, and now he had nothing. And while I didn't take any pleasure in his downfall, I couldn't ignore the satisfaction of knowing that I had made the right decision for me and for Mason. It's strange how quickly things can change when you finally let go of the weight of someone else's betrayal. A month after the divorce was final, I woke up one morning feeling like a new person. There was no more walking on eggshells, No more worrying about when Kyle would decide to drop by and try to play the part of the doting dad for an hour before disappearing again. No more pretending like I had to beg for respect or fight to be heard. I was finally, truly free. I remember that morning so clearly. Mason was still asleep, and I made myself a cup of coffee. I sat in the kitchen, looking out at the small backyard we had, the sunlight filtering through the blinds, casting a soft glow across the room. I hadn't realized how much I had missed moments like that. Peaceful, quiet, just me and my thoughts. I felt light, the kind of light that comes when you've been carrying around a boulder for years and finally put it down. There was no more Kyle this or Kyle that. There was just me, and Mason, and the future I was going to build with everything I had learned from the wreckage of my past. I looked at the clock, then grabbed my phone to check my emails. In my inbox was a message from the lawyer. There was another court date coming up, a chance to finalize child support payments and make sure Kyle didn't try anything underhanded. But honestly, I wasn't worried about it anymore. What I had realized in the last month was that Kyle could never touch me again. Not in a way that mattered. Sure, he could try to make my life harder financially, but that wasn't going to break me. Nothing he did could hurt me anymore. But what really struck me was this. I was no longer afraid. For so long I had let myself be afraid. Afraid of him leaving. Afraid of being alone. Afraid of what people might think. I had let fear dictate my life, my choices. But now, as I sat there in my kitchen, sipping my coffee, I understood something. Fear had no power over me anymore. I wasn't a victim. I was a survivor. I spent the rest of the day with Mason, doing the things that made us happy. We went to the park, played on the swings, and I listened to him babble on about dinosaurs, oblivious to the chaos his father had caused. I watched him with a full heart, realizing that he was the only thing that mattered. I was going to protect him, raise him, and love him with everything I had. And Kyle? He was nothing now. Nothing but a chapter in my life that I would never look back on. He could keep trying to destroy himself or make a fool of himself for attention, but I wasn't going to be part of that circus anymore. As the weeks went by, I kept feeling more and more like myself again. It's like the fog that had been clouding my mind for years finally lifted, and I could see clearly. I was rebuilding not just my life, but me. I felt a little more sure of myself every day. I started going to therapy, not because I was broken, but because I wanted to be the best version of myself. I needed someone to help me unpack the mess Kyle had left behind, the emotional scars that were still lingering. It wasn't about fixing myself, it was about understanding the damage and healing. Mason was flourishing, and as a mom, that was my greatest joy. I would do anything to give him a life that was stable, peaceful, and full of love. I was no longer carrying around the anxiety of wondering if Kyle would show up when he said he would or if he'd try to manipulate Mason into thinking I was the bad guy. No, the power had shifted. I was in control now. Kyle, though? He wasn't handling things as well as I thought he would. He started posting these sad little social media updates, like he was playing the victim. He'd post pictures of himself with Mason, but we all knew the truth. He'd never been present. He was just a placeholder. He hadn't been a real father, and that was painfully obvious to anyone who knew us. People started talking. Friends, family, even his own coworkers, everyone could see through the facade. And honestly, it didn't bother me. I wasn't bitter anymore. I was just clear. Clear about what kind of man he was. Clear about what I was capable of. One day, I got a call from his lawyer. Kyle wanted to revisit the custody agreement. Apparently, he had some new revelations about wanting to be more involved in Mason's life. At first, I thought about fighting it. I considered bringing it back to court, showing up with all the evidence I had. But then I thought, why bother? Why waste my time or energy on a man who would never show up for his son the way I would? So, I told the lawyer that I wasn't changing a damn thing. The agreement was final. And just like that, it was over. But it didn't feel like victory. Felt like release. Like I had finally let go of this man who had held me back for years. And once I let go, I realized how much space there was in my life to grow, to breathe, and to be happy. I started dating again, cautiously at first, but I was never in a rush. I wasn't looking for validation from anyone. I just wanted to live. And surprisingly, I found that my confidence was magnetic. The more I embraced my independence, the more I attracted people who respected me, not just for what I had been through, but for who I was becoming. Thank you all for watching. Have a nice day and see you in another video.